Welcome again to this live broadcast. Today we're talking about the myths about divorce. First of all, let me tell you that when we have cancer, we try to get all the information about cancer so that we can get it treated. And we do away with the myths because sincerely, it is a life-threatening issue. In the same way, whether we like it or not, divorce is a life-threatening issue. It threatens your mental health. It threatens your self-esteem. It threatens a lot of things about you. It makes you doubt that, am I really the person that I thought I was? Or am I really the person, or can I really become the person that I want to be? Divorce is a death, whether we like it or not. It's the death of a relationship. Divorce is not something that anybody goes into a marriage because they want to get divorced in 2 years or in 5 years. It is a death of a marriage. Just as in the same way, you don't give birth to a child and say, well, this child, I only give you 3 years to live. So we need to understand what the myths are about divorce so that we can get the facts right about divorce. Now, after having said that, divorce is not the end of life. Many people have divorced and have gone on to live very vibrant and strong lives. Many people have been divorced and they have remarried and become very happy, establishing themselves as indeed partners to be reckoned with. So it's divorce is a two-edged sword, if you like to call it that. It depends really a lot of the time on how you handle it. Now, staying in a marriage that is dead or is about to die is not necessarily the best option for many people. Divorce may just be the option that needs you to get out of there and understand what you're doing with your life. In the same way, too, it's not every altercation or every quarrel you have with your spouse that should lead to divorce. This evening, I'm going to be talking about 5 myths that we hear about divorce a lot. Now, these myths are probably the most popular of the ones that we hear. But that's not to say that that is all. There are many, 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 many stories around divorce that you start to wonder. And I'm not just talking about the law surrounding divorce. I'm talking about the life you live surrounding divorce. Now, when you want to live um, a life that is abundant and is true, you must understand that divorce needs to be considered. Divorce needs to be considered from the perspective of either I don't want to get divorced, so I want to make sure that I do not get divorced, or my marriage is not working properly and I think that it's time for me to move on. Whichever one is your own reality, I walk with you. I understand. I appreciate your sincerity with yourself because at the end of the day, you are the one that's going to live your life and not me and not anybody else who's going to give you these myths and these stories about divorce. The first one I'm going to talk about, and I've got them all written out here in little cards here, is once you get divorced, no one will love you any longer. Now, that's the greatest lie from the pit of hell. And I say from the pit of hell because it is. I know many, many, many people who have gone on to be loved by other people, by, a, by another spouse or another partner, who have had strong marriages. Now, the problem a lot of the time is when people get divorced, rather than sit down and ask yourself, what happened? What was my fault in this divorce? Where did I get it wrong? What could have I had done better? Now I'm divorced, I'm going into another relationship. Do I not need to be aware of this? Do I know? Do I even have a um, personal, personal, um, personal project for myself? First of all, do I understand who I am? Who I am. So as I'm going into this new relationship, do I even understand who is going into this new relationship? That is what causes problems. And that is why you find out that it has been said that most divorces, most second marriages, about 75% of them get into another divorce. But that's not because marriage itself is bad. It's because we do not know ourselves before we get into the first one, or indeed the intricacies of getting into the second one. Because remember that when you are in a second marriage, you have done it before. And whether you like it or not, your first spouse remains a part of your family. a part of your people you should have consideration for, especially if there's children between you. But even if there are no children between you, remember that also you have friends between you. You have maybe in-laws who you are still friendly with. So there's never a total clean cut in a divorce. Once you may get remarried and you may be loved by the person, you must understand that you need also to work on yourself between the period after you get divorced or after you understand and accept that the divorce will happen and when you remarry. It's important, please, for us all to build ourselves up and to properly date before we get into another marriage. Just as in the same way, it's good for us to sit down and assess what has gone wrong or what is going wrong in my marriage. And do I really want to get divorced? Because I am afraid that nobody else will love me. So, right, this one that I've got, let me try and see whether or not we can continue to improve on our relationship. Let me see if he's willing or she's willing that we continue to learn to love ourselves. We continue to learn ways to heal our marriages, and we continue to ask ourselves on a daily basis or individually, what am I doing that is wrong in this marriage, or how can I make my marriage better? But for as long as you are not doing that and you get divorced for any reason, then understand that you will need to recalibrate yourself, recalibrate your emotions, recalibrate your person before you get into another marriage. And I can assure you that you will be loved, because love a second time is not an impossibility. It has happened, it is happening, it will continue to happen. So that is the first myth. The second myth is divorce is always contentious. We make it contentious. And I know that a lot of people will start to wonder that, what am I talking about? But we make it contentious. We make it contentious when we say I must be the one to win the divorce. In our part of the world, and I'm speaking from Nigeria, we don't have no fault divorce. So when you go to court for a divorce, there must be a fault. And you cannot get divorced in this country, and I'm probably sure the whole of Africa, you cannot get divorced without a court order. That means you must go into court, you must give evidence about your divorce, about your marriage, about how you got married, about where you lived, about what is bringing you to court to ask for the marriage, about the children you have, about what are your plans for the children, whether you want maintenance, about your property. You must expose yourself 100% to the courts to get a divorce. So the question is, why must your divorce be contentious? Now, I sit here to say that your divorce need not be contentious. Many lawyers, and I'm a lawyer too, many lawyers will tell you, let us take him to the cleaners. That is when your divorce becomes contentious. Now, when you are going to court and you do not, especially custody of the children, need not be contentious. It needs to be, you need to ask the court, because there is a court, there's a section in the court where is mediation. You can mediate, or you can have a private mediation and sit down and work out what, in the opinion of the two of you, is the best interest of the children. You can work out what is, in the opinion of the two of you, the best way for maintenance, either of the children or of the spouse. You can talk about accommodation for your spouse and how much you are willing to contribute, or what you think should be the accommodation for your spouse. So that by the time you get to court, all these issues have been mediated. And you're simply saying to the court, forget about what happened. We just want to go. When you have decided that you want to go, it doesn't really matter whether the man slept with his head on the floor and his legs up, or whether the woman slept with her wrapper wide open, or with her wrapper tight family around her body. It really doesn't matter. Because once you have decided that, you know what, this marriage isn't worth it for me, I want to go, then you should find the easier way of going. Remember that if you have a contentious divorce, first of all, your divorce is a public document. So that means that if by any chance one of your children studies law in future, they may come across, I didn't say will, they may come across your divorce proceedings. And I'm sure they will not necessarily like the fact that my mommy and my daddy, they were exposing their dirty living in public. So mediation is always the place to go. Actually, before you start the divorce proceedings, it's better to go to mediation and say at mediation, and say to each other at mediation, we want to divorce. That is a fact. But we want a situation where we can mediate our issues. Now remember that the judge is not a member of your family. The judge is a cold-hearted person regarding your family. The judge doesn't understand the needs, the emotional needs of your children, and why is their father that should look after them, or is their mother that should look after them. The emotional needs of your children, why it is the father that should go to PTA, or the mother that should go to PTA. The court will make all kinds of orders depending on how contentious you choose to make it. So your divorce need not be contentious. If you're afraid to go to court because you think you have dirty linen in public, no, that shouldn't be the way. You should invite your spouse for mediation. Now, mediation is not free and it's not cheap. So you have to also consider that cost before you decide, I want to go to court for a contentious mediation. You will find maybe many lawyers will say, no, you don't need mediation. Let's just go to court. I don't think that you should take that advice. I think that you should always ask that you first of all want to mediate your divorce before you then take the decision that let's go to court and let's file a very simple application or petition in court saying our marriage has broken down irretrievably. Well, because I said there has to be a fault. My husband has behaved in a way that I cannot reasonably be expected to live with. He comes home late, or whatever it is you want to say. But then you know that there is no contention. I mean, there must be some truth in it. Maybe he comes home late. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he went to jail last year. Whatever your reasons are, but he has behaved in a way that you cannot reasonably be expected to live with. That is the way that I think that divorces should be handled now. So myth number 2, divorce is always contentious. No, it need not be the contentious. Myth number 3, mothers should always get custody. That's always a very emotional issue. Many people believe that the mother should get the custody. But my question is why? Why can't the father get the custody? And I'm not defending men. Why should the mother be the one getting the custody? First of all, the law says that in the consideration of custody, the best interest of the child or of the children is always of paramount consideration. Now, that is a lot of English. And who decides who has the paramount consideration when you go to court without mediation? You know, I've said before that you do not have to be contentious. Now, if you decide to be contentious, so that you go to court and you make the custody of your children contentious, you drag your children. The first thing is, your children never forget. No matter what you think, when you are fighting over them, I cannot allow you into the house to see the children, and you cannot see them, you cannot go and see your father, you cannot see your mother is this, your mother has a boyfriend. The children never ever forget. They may not necessarily hold you to it on a day-to-day basis, but they never forget. I know one young man who is about 45 or 46 now, and he has never married because he said that his parents' marriage was never anything to go by. That he did not see anything worthy of being copied in his parents' marriage. Now, in his own case, his parents did not divorce. They were always just fighting. They were always fighting. They were always saying things, and they were always talking back to the child and say, look, go and tell your mother this, go and tell your mother that. Children never forget. Now, who gets custody in a divorce suit? First of all, I have said, try and mediate that. And think to yourself, if you are a father and you know that your child probably is too young, and the nature of your work is such that you come home late because you are an excellent breadwinner, why do you want to keep the custody of your children when you know that it's probably just um some maid somewhere who is going to have care of those children because you have to be at work? So why is their mother not able to look after them whilst you provide for them? That's the first question I want to ask fathers. But in the same way, mothers, if you know, for instance, that you already have a boyfriend who probably wants to marry you, and honestly, I say congratulations, there's nothing wrong with that. And you know that you and your spouse, your new intended spouse, do not really want children. Why do you want to deprive the father of his children? But remember always that when you are presenting or making application to the court concerning the custody of your children, the important thing for the court is that they are going to determine what is the best interest of the child. Now, no court can determine the best interest of your child. You are the only one who can determine, the two of you, who can determine what is in the best interest of your child. In what way can I make our child's life happy? In what way can I help my child to grow up a sufficient adult, a sufficient individual, a sufficient person who can hold his own anywhere in the world? Now, I'm sorry, I'm adjusting my lights. So when you say only the mother can have custody of the child, not necessarily. Many mothers have lost custody of their children not because of money, but because they have not actually been responsible adults even in the foregoing. So before that time, they have not been responsible adults. Why would it? Why? And if a father then brings that up in court and says, "Ah, she comes home drunk every day, or she has a lot of boyfriends," and he shows all her boyfriends, and she says, although I always say an adulterous mother isn't necessarily a bad mother. So how are you, if you are an adulterous mother, or if you are a drunken mother half of the time? What are you doing to show that I am still the best parent to have custody of the child or of the children? So that is what you need to tell the court. Once you decide that you are not going to mediate, you must be able to show to the court exactly why you are the better parent. And it will not necessarily go to the mother because she's the mother. It will go to the person who, in the opinion of the court, has the best interest of the child. Now, when I started law practice, when I started working in law, we used to write in the petition, I have a 3-bedroom flat, I have a 3-bedroom flat, I have a car and a driver that can take the children to school. I just want the father to give us school fees, and I want the father to continue to pay the child's school fees until he gets to university or until he gets to tertiary education. Currently, he's at ABC Nursery School. He will continue to go there. He will continue to go to his elder spouse is at BCD Primary School. They will continue to go to the same school. To be honest, many people won on that basis because the other party didn't have his own arrangement before the court. So when you are going for a custody tussle, you must have your facts, you must have your arrangements, you must have everything at the tip of your fingers and on your petition. Otherwise, women need not get custody of the children. That's a myth, that because a child is 2 years old, the mother will get custody. Maybe if you find a judge who maybe is sympathetic towards the child or the mother, they may, but rarely. There's no law that says that the mother gets the custody of the children. Myth number 4: adultery is not punished in Nigeria. That is not true. That is not true. Under our law, adultery is punished. I didn't say bigamy, I said adultery. Adultery is punished under our law. But you must have brought the petition within 3 years of the adultery. Let me repeat that. Adultery is punished under our law, but you must have brought the adultery, the petition for divorce. You cannot bring adultery without a petition for divorce. So if your husband commits adultery or your wife commits adultery, and you decide that, you know what, let me just leave her for now, you are taken to have condoned that adultery, and it's not punished. It is not punishable. But when your spouse commits adultery and you are able to show to the courts that, okay, the child that they had is 5 years old, but I only knew about that child, and within 3 months of my knowing, or within 3 years of my knowing, I brought this petition to the court, then you are covered. It is a 3-year time limit. If you are not in court within 3 years of your spouse committing adultery, forget it. So that is when it is not punished. Otherwise, it is punished. It is not a man's world. The law is very, very clear. If my husband commits adultery and I know, and I resume or I continue our sexual relationship, I am assumed to have condoned that adultery. So whether I knew, yes, if I get to know today and I have sex with my husband in a week's time or in 2 months' time because he has begged me, I have condoned that adultery. And that's why it appears that adultery is not condoned. It's because a lot of the times society will say, forgive him, let it be. The church will say, forgive him. Fine, by all means, forgive him. But that is not the same as saying that the law tolerates adultery. The law does not tolerate adultery. Similarly, if it is the woman who has committed adultery within 3 years of your knowing and showing that you have not had any relationship anymore as husband and wife, you can bring your petition, and the adultery will be punished. Now, how will it be punished? First of all, you must know the person that your spouse committed adultery with. You must also have details of the adultery. The one that is easiest to prove is when there is a child between them. When there isn't a child between them, you have to have more evidence. It could be these days, it could be maybe videos, or it could be odd conversations that were recorded, because these days electronic evidence is accepted. But you cannot just go to court and say, it's may it please the court, my name is Arunke, I am suing my husband Abidemi, and he has committed adultery with Ajoke, because you must mention the person's name. I know they are committing adultery because of the way they play with each other. No. But on so and so date, at so and so time, at 6 p.m. in the evening, my husband did this, or my husband got into a call which was recorded, and I have a recording, or my husband did this, my husband transferred money to her, and the reference on it was for my love, or for our love, to celebrate our love, something like that. Then of course, that even the court may say that one is not adultery, but at least you get the drift, that you must show the circumstances of their adultery. Otherwise, don't waste your time, because the court will say you are just wasting its time and you will not get anything. But if you are able to prove that your spouse committed adultery, that person committed adultery with your spouse will pay damages. It might not be much, but they will pay damages. And they will be, we call it being damnified in damages. They will pay damages to you. It might not be much, it might be 500,000, it might even be 150,000, depending, of course, on what you are able to prove, and also the circumstances surrounding the adultery. You might not get much, and you may get, but the important thing is that they will be damnified in damages, because they have committed adultery. So what it means is that they have taken what belongs to you. That's what it means. I forget the phrase now. All right. Now, the fifth and the last myth that I will talk about this evening is the one that says, if you don't pay child maintenance, you lose access to your child. Now, every parent who loses custody usually gets an order for access. Some courts will say every holiday should be divided into two. Some courts will say every weekend the other spouse should have access to the child. Some courts will say they should go and spend time in the other parties and the other parent's house. The court order varies according to the circumstances that we have presented, because we chose not to mediate. So when the court makes that order, the court then might make an order and say the parent that is that doesn't have the custody, because he probably has higher income. Now, if he doesn't have higher income, he may not even get that order of maintenance. They may not ask him to pay maintenance. If he's able to show that the woman you are giving custody to, she has more money than me, he has to prove that as well. Now, if there is an order that says pay child support or child maintenance, pay X amount a month, and he doesn't pay, you cannot stop your child from visiting the parent. Now, the reason behind it is this: every child belongs to each parent 100%. So as much as I have rights over the child 100%, the father has rights over the child 100%. So when there's a court order that says I have custody and the father has access to the child, it doesn't entitle me, or it disentitles me to say, because he did not send money for your feeding, if I did not feed you, will he be able to see you? No. The father, in this case, this kind of example, does not lose access to the right of access to the child. Indeed, if the father is prevented from seeing the child, he can go back to court and say, let me have a variation of that your custody order. So it is a myth when you think that because he did not pay maintenance, he cannot see the children. What child does he want to see? Does he pay? No, even though it doesn't pay. Because remember that even the countries we watch their films, especially American videos and their American movies, and we say, it doesn't say that the father should not visit the child. It simply says that the father, you then what we say, attach the earnings of the father. So what do I mean by attaching the earnings of the father? Now, the father works in, let's just give an example. I don't know any father that MTN, he works in MTN. And the court has said he should give the child 400,000 naira a month. And he does not give the child any money. He probably has a new family, and he's looking after his new family. So he doesn't give the child any money. And you, the mother, then you are struggling to look after the child. Or even you're not struggling, but you think, well, after all, he's entitled to see the child, so why shouldn't he be entitled to pay the money? You go to the court and get an order. It's called an order of five. I know, so sorry. I'm saying I'll tell you about the two different things. You go to court and you get an order of attachment of earnings, which is an order the court then makes to MTN. Remember, I said MTN is the employer, and says, take out 400,000 from this man's salary every month and send it to the mother's account at Access Bank, account number XYZ, on the 28th or on the 25th of every month. MTN must abide. Otherwise, their MD goes to jail. That is attachment of earnings. Now, when it's an order for 5A, you go to court and you say, I want an order of 5A. This man is owing me 400,000 and he hasn't paid for 6 months, or he hasn't paid for 12 months. So it is 400,000 and it has become a debt. So yes, because it has become a debt, he's owing you, it's a debt. So I also want interest on the money at, I think it's 3% or 6%, I'm not sure. I also want the interest on the money at 3%, which is equal to X amount as at so and so date. So he's owing me 2.4 million plus whatever the interest is, and I want it. And you take it, once the judge signs it, you take it to the sheriff's office. We call them bailiffs. Some of us call them bailiffs now. And they come, knock on his door at 5 a.m. and carry all his property, including everything that's valuable, including his checkbooks, because remember, you need his checkbook to know where he has a bank account, including his checkbook. A third one, talking about bank accounts, is that you can actually attach his earnings in the bank as well. So the order goes to his bank and says, Mr. XYZ is owing 2.4 million. Attach his earnings. And he will not be able to remove one kobo from his account until he settles it. He settles the total amount. So please, stop thinking that because they have not paid maintenance, you will stop granting them access. They are entitled to access. So when you find yourself in this kind of situation, find out what the law is. How am I protected? All these myths, all these stories about marriage, about divorce, and for that reason, even if I'm going to divorce him, I'm going to give him a hard time. You don't need to. You just need to know what your rights are in a divorce. This evening, the first myth is oh dear, is that once you get divorced, no one will love you. If you are able to look after yourself and learn how to build yourself up properly, somebody will love you. Divorce is always contentious. Divorce need not be contentious. There's something called mediation. Mothers should always get custody. No, the person who has the best interest of the child, who has the best arrangements for the child, that is always of paramount consideration. But as I said, maybe you go back and go to mediation concerning your child, so that invariably you'll find most men will concede custody. But when you want to make it contentious, that is when the fight starts. Adultery is not punished in Nigeria. Adultery is punished in Nigeria. But unfortunately, most of us do not know that there's something called condonation of adultery. So once we have condoned adultery, that is what makes it appear that adultery is not punished in Nigeria. Adultery is punished under the law. If you don't pay child support, if they don't pay child support, you will deny them access. You don't have that right to deny anybody access to their child. If they have not paid child support, go to the sheriff's section, go to the admin section of the court that granted the divorce, and they'll give you an order either of attachment or an order of FIFE against the person's personal property. That's what we have for you tonight. The myths about many things make us not do the things we ought to do. And by the time we understand that we need to do these things, sometimes the time is late. So whatever myth you have, whatever myth they're telling you about divorce, always check with your lawyer, with your divorce lawyer. Don't leave it, please, don't leave it to those who do not know. There are many people who do not know. There are many Auntie Claras around. Auntie Clara is the one who will say, let me tell you, they don't give custody to fathers. They do. Auntie Clara is the one that will say to you, give him a fight. You don't need it, because your child will remember. And at the time your child is remembering, many years down the line, Auntie Clara has walked away. So let us always remember that there are many myths surrounding divorce. And from time to time, we'll talk about myths surrounding issues of marriage, issues of divorce, issues of separation, issues of inheritance, issues regarding the family. For now, thanks for watching.